let's get right into this real quick. What are Social Security disability settlements? That's what this video is about. I did not prepare a script for this video because sometimes I like to see what's going to happen. And going off script for me, some people love it and some people are just rude as hell. And I like those rude people because some of their mean comments, boy, they get me flared up and inspired to create all kinds of things. But with that said, let's get into it real quick. Social Security disability settlements, they happen for SSI and SSDI benefits. They are a unique way of looking at a very simple idea. With Social Security disability benefits, there's two main ways to be found disabled. You either have one impairment that de facto means you're disabled under their rules and regulations, right? They have listings. You got to meet the elemental requirements of the listings for that one impairment. Now, on the other end, you have a settlement. A settlement is where all of your impairments combined equate to a finding of disability benefits. And the reality is that this, with the listing and basically having met the elements for that specific impairment, this is a much more cut and dry, here are the elements, here you go, way of doing it. But then over here, essentially being found disabled with a vocational allowance, that's where they look at all of your impairments combined. They say, well, could this person do the walking? Well, could this person do the sitting? Well, could this person complete the basic functions required? Well, is this person doing this? Is this person doing that? Are they able to go ahead and stay on task the entire day? And here's the thing. A lot of people might not. A lot of people might not. That's the reality of this thing. So as a result of that whole situation, what's happening is that when people think of disability, they tend to get a little lacking in focus with what's actually going on. Now, back in the day, it still happens rarely, but back in the day, there were aggressive people, usually on the female side, right, who would argue that so long as you're really disabled, you'll magically get disability benefits. And that is the mindset that comes from an era where people were much more likely to be found disabled, right? The percentages were higher. The amount of people applying versus the amount of people winning, you're just much more likely to, actually have those disability benefits. And these were called the golden era of Social Security disability benefits. Now, as a result of that, okay, back in the day, you had people who would say, oh, well, if you weren't found disabled, you must not be that bad. And that created this warped mentality where disabled people were actually abusing the minds of those seeking disability benefits. And when that would happen, what you'd end up with is a lot of really depressed people seeking disability benefits. And that's because the people who were already on disability benefits were found disabled back in the day, when it was much easier to be found disabled. Go 10 years down the line, 15 years down the line, you get somebody in their family or somebody they know through a friend or relative or cousin or whatever, and they just can't get disability benefits. And that person would stand back and say, the original recipient from way back in the day, oh, well, you must not be that severe. You must not really be disabled. And that would crush the spirit of essentially a potentially disabled individual. Of course, the person from way back in the day, it's becoming less and less and less because a lot of them are learning how complex the program is and how the culture of the SSA has changed to deny more people. Now, with that said, and this is super duper important, with that said, those individuals, right, essentially, seeking disability benefits nowadays, what they're running into is a cultural change where all of their impairments combined and the little bit of magic, the little bit of preference that disability judges show here or there for a particular impairment, or here or there for a particular, fact pattern setup, those cultural changes of making it less likely that a judge will approve you are happening mostly in the arena of vocational allowances. Why? Are most people found disabled with a listing level criteria? Shit, no, not even close. Not even. If you go talk to most people that that have disability benefits, the grand majority of them were not found disabled because they met a listing. They're just not that severe. They're not. They're just not. And the reason why that is at the end of the day is that listing requirements, look, if you've got a heart condition, you're having a hard time walking, from the kitchen to the bathroom. If you've got, for example, a respiratory condition, same kind of gig. You can barely walk from point A to point B. If you've got an amputee problem, man, at the meat listing level, they take your entire leg and half your hip, or both your hands or both your feet, right? Let's say that's an eyesight issue. One eye is blind. The other eye, you can only see the big E at the top of the chart and nothing else. So do most people fall into this condition of being a listing level criteria approval? No. And most of the people that were found disabled back in the day were found disabled under what's called that vocational allowance. This vocational allowance, think of it more as a settlement between the filed claim of the potential beneficiary and the Social Security Administration. That's just easier that way. Think of it as a settlement. The idea is that you present to the court, okay, essentially your limitations as a result of your impairments, which make you less capable of working. And as a result of this mishmash of all these potential impairments with all these unique combinations, right? You got these three impairments and these three physical impairments, these three mental impairments. And when they combine, it causes this horrible, horrible can't work situation. You might have three mental impairments and three physical impairments that don't combine to create a big limitation situation. It is your settlement situation. That's what it is. A vocational allowance is exactly that. Why is it relevant to think about it that way? A lot of people, when they are found disabled, they want to know why. My first reaction to that is always to say, what happened at your alleged onset date? Why did they approve that alleged onset date? There's usually a moment in time that they can point to with bullet points in their, adjudication brief that says, on this day, we believe you became severely impaired because, right? Now, at the end of the brief, they don't actually tell you why. They don't. But if you read up higher in the brief of the ALJ decision, there's usually that date and some reasoning and analysis behind it. Maybe it was medical imaging that you had. Maybe it was a surgery that failed. Maybe it was something where you were in a car accident. Maybe it was something where you were Baker acted inside a facility. Maybe it was any one of those things. But the point is, for this settlement to occur, there needs to be something that ties you to a point or some sort of realistic bubble zone where you realistically transition into becoming that severe. Now, as a result of this, and I mean, the people applying by themselves, they're not really going to know how to negotiate this or present this to the judges and stuff like that. So this is more for people who are represented, who can then say, okay, well, what am I doing with this? What is my settlement going to look like? What are we going to argue so that the judge wants to side with us? So the point with this is that you have to show that you're unable to work, right? All the videos on YouTube are all you got to show is that you're unable to work. But realistically, if you're not sure how you have to show you're unable to work, there's two ways. Number one, jobs you've actually done. Number two, jobs that you could potentially do. Okay, those are the two categories of this thing. You got to show why you would, be bad at new jobs and why you got fired from old jobs. That's basically it. So whenever you quit a job, you're like, I'm just going to quit. The first thing that comes to that judge's mind when you quit a job is, what benefit was conferred at that time to that claimant by quitting at that point? Did they quit because they got a pension? Did they quit because they matched something in their 401k? Did they quit because of what? Why did they quit? What's the reason? Did they just have a kid? Why did they quit? Did they just get an inheritance? Why did they quit? There's a lot of moms out there that are quitting, that want to raise their kid, but go on disability benefits, right? There's a lot of moms out there playing that game. It's just the reality that it is. So the judges, they're aware of this. They're looking at this. They're saying, hey, wait a minute. Now, with that said, and this is important, okay, when you begin your negotiation for a settlement, you have to consider step one, which is actually element 4. Why would you not be able to do your past work? Well, you can prove that based off of how the relationship ended with your past work. I was fired because I, with really severe PTSD, got arrested while at work doing A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, right? You can outline that. Or I was not able to complete the functions. The top 5 functions I was not able to complete were boop, 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 because impairment boop does this, impairment boop does that, impairment, C limits that, so on and so forth. You have to be able to show why you couldn't do that job. And what's crucial is that it has to be shown why you couldn't do that job from the date that you are claiming from your alleged onset date, hoping that it turns into an EOD, right? Now, with that said, okay, once you get through the whole why I can't do my past work, then comes the tricky part. Then comes element 5, the cleaver, the shit show, the tough one. Why can't you do any other job in the national economy that realistically fits into a simple job, SVP 1-2, that's light or sedentary? And that's tricky. And what happens is this: when you ask, and I mean, you ask yourself, but when you ask yourself this, why am I unable to do a simple job? Most claimants think of only their old jobs. The brain instantly goes to whatever jobs they've had within the past 10, years. They don't go 15 years back. Their brain goes to the past 10 years. And the SSA only considers 5 years now, but they go back usually around 10 years and think about their past work. That's not right. The right thing is, why can't they do the jobs that are super simple? Right? And that's the thing. Like sometimes, you get a claimant that will say, well, they can't possibly expect a doctor like me to go and do a job, handing out cupcakes at a cupcake store. How dare they? I'm above that. And, I agree. I get it. I understand. But at the same time, the jobs you have to consider are somebody that's basically sitting there and handing out something to somebody else, or maybe turning an item over repetitively, or maybe filling out addresses or typing something in, right? Or maybe somebody who's doing like a basic reception-oriented job where you're directing people where to go, right? Or maybe you are, whatever. It's the so simple jobs that exist out there that they're trying to tie it to. So when you consider this settlement, you have to figure out how to convince the judge that there's no job in the national economy that you could do at a potential full-time capacity throughout the week. Now, where do claimants' heads usually go with this? They go, oh, well, I couldn't do this job because, I just, I can't. And then they go through this like little, well, I guess I couldn't, blah, 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 blah. The best way to build that claim is to show with your doctors RFC limitations, residual functional capacity limitations. You get them to fill out the form, says they can only do stuff 1/3 of the day, or they can't do it at all, right? So a bunch of functions of that job, they could only do it not at all, or 1/3 of the day, out of the whole day. Because remember, they're looking at this from an 8-hour day usually, and 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. If you can only do it 1/3 of the time, these jobs aren't happening. Your butt's getting fired. It's not going to work. So you've got to be able to show with your doctor that you can only do things around 1/3 of the actual workday. That's what they're looking for with the judges. The judges are looking for, can they do more than 1/3? Can they do 2/3? Can they do the whole thing, the whole day? So the key is you're really sitting back saying to yourself, all right. I got to show that I can only do this function, right? Let's say 1/3 of the day at most, right? Okay, cool. Now, when you approach this idea of doing something 1/3 of the day, what is crucial with this idea is knowing the specific thing that you've got to beat. So let's pick one. We got a bunch here: sitting, standing, walking, bending, climbing, reaching, squatting, stooping, crawling, kneeling, crouching, balancing. We got a lot of options here. Let's talk about kneeling. Okay, everybody knows what kneeling is. You're bending the knees. Okay, we don't have to worry about the whole waist thing, leaning forward. Kneeling, we're bending the knees. Okay, we're kneeling down to do something. Okay, so the real bottom line is that if we're going to show that you can't do kneeling, what are amazing forms of evidence that would show your limited ability to do kneeling, right? Having your doctor notate that you need a cane, crutch, walker, wheelchair, specialty shoes that don't require laces. You have a procedure for putting on pants. You have a procedure for getting in and out of The shower. You had to have a specialty shower installed where you can just walk in and not step over anything. There's no steps going in and out of the front or the back of the house. Or if there are steps, there's some sort of system in place to get your butt through the door. Kneeling, tying shoes, kneeling, picking stuff up when you have to clean, kneeling, okay? Having to go ahead and get something that's low from the kitchen cabinets when you're cooking something, kneeling, picking up the laundry soap, kneeling, tons of stuff, right? One that popped up one time that actually caught me off guard was when the person brought up their religion and then the judge brought up, does the practice require them to kneel? That I never saw. I didn't expect that question, but that's not here nor there. Now, with that said, and here's the main thing, okay? Let's take this whole kneeling idea. If we look at kneeling, and you're like, I can't do a job, I can't do kneeling. Think about that job. Think about what that job would require. Let's say it was a job where you were a security person. Let's make it easy. They wouldn't use this, but let's make it easy to comprehend. At a mall, at one of those round desks, and you got to go, okay, you want to go to that store, you go that way. You want to go to that store, you go that way. You want to go to that store, you go that way. Okay. Kneeling. Why would you be unable to do that job? This isn't an easy one right up front. Let me see what you're going to write in the comments section so we can get some brains working here. Okay. So talk to me about kneeling. You're a security guard type individual that's directing people as to where shops are. You're also watching some monitors. You're like, you're low level security here. Okay. So think about it. Let me see in the chat section. Let's get some brains working here. Let's see it in the chat section. Why would kneeling be important to that job? Come on. Can't pick up the drop keys to lock up. There's one. Okay. Anybody else? My cat just fired me. But that one caught me a little off guard, guys. The cat comment. I don't think that was what we were shooting for there, but that's okay. What about, for example, when you're going to go ahead and have to lock the entrance booth area at the bottom and the top? What about, for example, having to go ahead and turn the computer on, which is probably under the desk? What about, for example, having to go ahead and pull out paperwork that's below something to hand it to somebody as to where something is when they run out of enough of them on the top of the desk? Okay. What about, for example, having to go ahead and let's say, you have to go and grab some sort of quick safety device, like one of those little orange cones, because a spill happened. Somebody threw up somewhere. Something happened. Right? So the reality here, I just saw Raymond's lack of attention squirrel. I got you. Okay. So yeah, sitting by kneeling into the chair, right? You get a little kneel going and pop into the chair. Okay. Picking something off the floor. Excellent. Diana got it there. The point is, you have to prove why you wouldn't be able to do this job. So we pick kneeling. Now you've got kneeling. You're starting to get the kneeling thing. You're good to go. You feel the kneeling. Awesome. Now we move on to walking. Okay. Walking is important. A lot of jobs require it for an obvious reason. Walking. When it comes to walking, Richard Carr, I'm not going to say, although that is accurate, I'm not going to go into that. Now, here's the thing. Walking. All right. Let's be fair about this. Walking is super important. Let's say that you have now a security guard job where you got to walk. Let's say for 2 hours of the day. And you have to walk 200 feet, ID badge, different door frames, let's say 10 door frames to say you reach this spot, that spot, this spot, that spot, so that they know that you're working. You got your ID badge that proves you hit the spot. Okay. Why would you be unable to walk, let's say 200 feet? What proves that you would have difficulty walking 200 feet? What proves that if you had to compete against another individual who was doing the same job that didn't have your limitations, that you would be ineffective at that job compared to the sustained ability of that person who is doing that job without limitations? Think about it. Okay. Neuropathy of the feet. So having a lack of feeling in your feet, you're a fall risk. You're required to use a cane, slows you down. Required to use a walker with a seat, slows you down. Required to go ahead and use a wheelchair, slows you down. Okay. Not able to go ahead and really follow after somebody if you see something. What about having to go ahead and take more breaks? What about issues where if you walk too many feet in a certain temperature, your body swells, you have joint issues? Okay. What about specialty shoes? All right. What about, clothing that allows your body to breathe more because you overheat quickly, right? You get the breather issue, you get the sweating issue. Okay. So think about it. Why would you have a tough time walking? Okay. Are there any steps in the way? Are there any curbs in the way? Are you in a golf cart sometimes? Why would you get fired from that job? All right, we're going to pick another one now. Now we're going to go for carrying. Okay. Carrying with your right arm. Why would you have a tough time carrying things? Let's say you've got a manufacturing job where you got to put eggs in cartons. You stack the cartons. And you push the cart, right? Push the cart with the cartons. All right. So we got to lift stuff. Right arm. Okay. Why would you get fired at the egg job because of your right arm? Right? Are we talking about issues with the wrists, limitations with numb fingers? Are we having issues where we can't hold things? What about fine manipulative features? What about large grasping features? What about, for example, difficulty where our arm attached to our shoulder is limited by our back, is limited by our hips, is limited by our knees? We can only lift so much because of some other issue, a back issue, a neck issue. What about, for example, having a mental limitation, low IQ? You pick the thing up, you forget what you're doing with it. Okay. Good. Dropping eggs. You're missing a thumb. Carpal tunnel. Okay. There you go. All right. So you're starting to see what the real question here is. And the real question with this whole idea of a settlement is, why would you consistently be fired from these simple jobs? If you were to sum up disability and be like, okay, what evidence exists in the file that says you would be fired from these jobs because somebody else would do a better job than you would because of your impairments? Okay. That's what we're shooting for here. Let's do one more. That way I know you're good to go on this thing. Let's look at, all right, being punctual. Being punctual, okay, means showing up on time. And that doesn't just mean showing up on time the first time, like when you get there. That means if you have a meeting, if you're supposed to be at a different workstation, if you're supposed to go ahead and clear so many items and repetitively go back to those functions, being punctual with your actions, right? That's what we're shooting for with this whole punctual thing. Not just I showed up on time the first time, right? Being able to maintain that consistent routine. So, why would you get fired from these simple jobs if you had issues with being punctual as a result of your impairments? Okay, let's see some ideas. Let's throw them up here. Let's see what they are in the chat section. Okay, so you got seizures, you got attacks, you got depression. Yeah, but those are diagnostic impressions. Those are medical conditions. What I'm looking for is actual evidence. I'm looking for evidence. What is going to show that you will be crappy at being punctual? Well, if you don't go work at a job, it's hard to show that you won't be punctual. But if you are seeking disability benefits and you apply for a job and start the job and then you get fired because you didn't show up enough consistently, that is good evidence to show that you weren't punctual. Or let's take, for example, an individual, right, who had to change workstations and be at the new workstation at a certain time consistently. And they were just late for it over and over and over again, right? What would that show? That would show them getting written up at that job for not doing the job properly. That's good evidence. Okay. Let's say that they have medical appointments, right? They're supposed to go to the doctor, they don't show up. They're supposed to go to the doctor, they don't show up. They're supposed to go to the doctor, they don't show up. They're supposed to go to the doctor, they don't show up. What does that show you? They're not able to be punctual, so they're not able to show up for the doctor's appointment. They miss a bunch of doctor's appointments, boom, not a punctual person. Okay? Stop thinking about this solely as my impairment is this label. Start thinking of it as, what does the judge need to write as bullet points to show as evidence that your butt would get fired from that job? That's what the judge is looking for. That's what the settlement comes down to. Why would you be a crappy employee that resulted in your termination every time consistently? And that's a high standard. Think about that. Getting fired from a job over and over and over and over again, that's a tough standard. That's not easy. It's just not easy. Now, with that said, one thing you have to bank on with these low-level jobs is that the employers are not going to give you any bennies, right? They're not going to give you the benefit of the doubt. They might give you some ADA accommodations, stuff like that, but they're not going to give you bennies. If you're some high-level executive and you need to take a week off, they're going to give you bennies. But they're not going to give you bennies if you're working at McDonald's. That's the reality, okay? Maybe some ADAs, but not the bennies. So you've got to focus on a tight-knit, aggressive training work position at this low-level job. And you've got to be able to explain why you would not be able to do that training, why you would not be able to complete that training. And the idea behind this is you need to give the judges bullet points. So instead of the mentality that I always see from claimants, which is like, well, I have this impairment and that's why I can't do the job. That's useless. Like, what do you want me to do with that? That's not evidence that you can't do the job. That's just evidence that you have an impairment. It's not even evidence how severe it is. You have to think of ways that make it certain that the judge will be able to create bullet points in his brief or her brief that show that you are crappy at doing the RFCs. What do I mean? Remembering locations, work-like procedures, understanding short instructions, understanding detailed instructions, understanding oral instructions, understanding written instructions, completing simple instructions, completing detailed instructions, concentrating for extended periods, performing within a schedule, maintaining regular attendance, being punctual, being tolerant, maintaining an ordinary routine. Why would you be shitty at these particular things consistently so that you would every single time get fired? It's a good question. And ultimately what this comes down to, and I think it's incredibly important to think of it this way, is that if you're going through a CDR, if you're trying to be found disabled in the very, very beginning, right, trying to get these benefits, you have to be able to provide examples of why you are a failure at work. And a lot of people, especially the VA people, the VA people hate thinking like that. VA people are taught to not think of themselves as failures because they must achieve the marching orders at hand. But you have to define why you are a failure at working. Now, a lot of disabled people don't like to take the mentality of like, I don't think I'm a failure because of my impairments. And the SSA banks off of that. They bank off of the moral, ethical, like, I don't want to be a failure in my life. I'm an able-bodied person. Blah, blah, blah. My impairments don't slow me down. No. They're looking for the people who have realized the game here. And the game here is you have to show how you are a failure at doing these jobs. Not because you internally, ethically, morally just, no. The game here is simple. Why are you bad? Why are you bad at doing things that pay you money? Think about it, right? You might be Ubering. You might be lifting. You might be getting somebody's groceries, bringing it to them. Why would you get fired at this job? You're a receptionist at a tanning salon. Why would you get fired at the job? Why are you a failure at working at these jobs? Oh, because I have anxiety. No. What are the bullet points that prove that you would not be able to do that job? You would mess up the calendar. You would mess up the payment system. You wouldn't show up on time. You'd leave early. You wouldn't show up some days because of medical appointments or just because you didn't want to. What are the bullet points? The bullet points that allow you to prove that you are a failure at work. That's the settlement. Now, why is the SSA so restrictive on how many settlements they give, vocational allowances? It's because there's too many people on disability benefits. And why are there too many people on disability benefits? It's not because the program wasn't designed to have people pay for a program that they might need. That's what it is. Because everybody's, SSI benefits are never going to run out. That's paid for by general taxes. But SSDI benefits, we can't have too many people on the, It's because the government wants to go ahead and keep more money in the trust funds, because that means they can go ahead and not have to worry about the trust funds. But that didn't work out, did it? Because the retirement trust fund and the Medicare trust fund are a running dry. Because, we don't pay enough in FICA taxes because there's not enough new people that were born earning enough, because America sold all of its manufacturing overseas. And as a result of that, Mexico too. And as a result of that, we're now in a situation where we don't have enough humans making enough money, taxing enough FICA taxes, and the whole thing will collapse. Sad. It's very sad. And people will be like, it looks like you support that sadness. I don't support that sadness. It's 12:13 a.m. before a Monday morning work. My level of emotion is low because I can't, it's 12:13 a.m. I work the whole weekend. All right. So understanding this idea of a settlement, you are giving the judge what the judge needs to find you disabled. You are giving them that by showing them that you are a failure at work. You are giving them the failure at work by showing them specific line items that show why you would fail at that job. Being off task, not showing up for work, not completing things in a timely fashion, not showing up on time, right? This not performing within a schedule, not being punctual, not being tolerant of others, not coordinating with others, not maintaining an ordinary routine, not being within proximity to others, not being distracted by others, not being able to make simple work decisions, not keeping pace with others, not being able to complete a normal workday. You have to show them why you could only do those tasks 1/3 of the time of a regular workday, but not the rest of the day. If you show them that, right? If you show them that, where you end up, just to be clear, is with an approval, very likely. But if you show up to the hearing and you provide testimony evidence where your whole thing is, well, Your Honor, I have some pain issues here, that's why I'm here today. Fail. That's why would you, you're not prepared at all? Now, with that said, most claimants actually go to the hearings and do that because they're represented by, giant big box firms, or they got their attorney through their insurance company, or it's like some non-legal rep. It is what it is, because they mass advertise. You guys get sucked into that, and it is what it is. But the thing here is, you're seeking the settlement, the vocational allowance, why you are a failure at working. What evidence shows that if I gave you a simple job, you would muck it all up? Just, wow, how could you? Oh, man, you'd muck it all up. The point here, and I want you to, I see Raymond Rod, and thank you, good sir, I appreciate that. The point here that I want you to consider with all this is that Social Security disability benefits are an explanation as to why you are a failure in the traditional capitalism model. Okay, so capitalism: work really hard, achieve great things, get retirement, you'll have money. Unfortunately, that whole thing fails because retirement benefits don't pay for stuff. People can't earn enough money, and they spend their whole life with student loans. It's so bad. If you look at how this was supposed to work, student loans are supposed to be paid off within 10 years. 10 years. I'll be paying mine into the 60s. Yeah, of course I am significantly more educated than the average individual. But still, very important. Just to be fair, you know what I mean? It's just one of those things where you gotta understand that Social Security benefits are about explaining what makes you special in a vocational marketplace in a bad way. Couldn't do things the right way. Unknown Soldier, thank you for the 1600. Take my money and go to bed. Thanks for the education and the uneducated. I super appreciate it. That's amazing. That's super incredible. Very, very cool. I guess the big thing too, and I want to make one, one final thing, just so you guys understand. And that's, by the way, just so you guys know, that's Japanese yen. So, what I want you to understand this: judges they got to get shit done. They got so many hearings per day. Then they got to review hearing decisions. Then they got to sign hearing decisions. Then they got to review fee petitions. They got only so much time per day. They got to get shit done. They got to get shit done. And so the thing is, howdy, Sam Oliver. And so the thing is this, okay? And this is why it's so incredibly, incredibly important. You have to basically give the judges exactly what they need to do their job. You know how like a lot of you are like, the judge will see how bad I am. How bad I am. Ah, you know, and the double, you know, speared fingers with the claw. You know what I mean? We got a lobster with spirit. The double. That's not how it works. It's not the judge will see. That's not how it works. You feed the judge what the judge needs to complete their brief. If you don't feed the judge what the judge needs to complete the brief, then you have made the judge's job shittier, because now they got to spend more time and read through more of the record and try and figure out how they're going to get this thing decided. And they don't know which way to go with it, because there's not much that proves that they can't work, but yet they're looking at you and you're like, I can't do anything. You got to feed them what they need to complete their brief, which is essentially, putting it very simply, why you are a failure at work. And if you achieve that, if you do a good job of that, and you have a fair judge, then you will end up, essentially, with an approval. Most of the time. So, you know, I heard, okay, so Unknown Soldier said, I heard a rumor that sending the judge a post-brief helps. So what's a post-hearing brief? A post-hearing brief is where you sum up all the things that you want the judge to know after the hearing. Post-hearing briefs are mostly important if there's some wiggle on something that needs to be further explained, or the judge went into something that you can see they're like, I don't know if I like this claimant because of this, and then you further explain why it's okay, or what that claimant, you know, is actually doing, or why the claimant sounded like they were lying but they actually weren't. That's when you use a post-hearing brief, but otherwise you don't use them, because remember, you do not abuse the amount of time the judge has to review the record. If you have to keep sending stuff in, then you have to keep sending stuff in. But if you're just sending a brief on this and a brief on that and a brief on this and a brief on that, you're slowing the judge down. You want the judge to be able to leave the hearing room thinking it's an approval. I'm going to say it again because it's incredibly important. You want the judge to leave the hearing room thinking it's an approval. Sometimes that's not possible. A lot of my claimants, the homeless, you know, they need to go to future CEME appointments. You know, the judge wants to clarify exactly when they last used that particular substance, all that stuff. So it's crucial. It's crucial to be able to explain to the judge why you're a failure at working. Now, some of you will still get denials. It's just part of the game. A lot of people used to be in this mental state where the SSA knew everything about their claim, knew everything about the evidence they submitted. People don't live in that world anymore. You know, I remember, you know, 'cause it's in September 27th, that'll be 11 years owning my own firm. We're September 9th right now, so it's coming up. I remember when I used to work for other firms in disability field. I remember, just to clarify, that there were people who basically felt very strongly that when it comes to, you know, this whole like whether or not you should be found disabled or not disabled, blah, 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 that it was all based off of these ridiculous things, right? Did you get an old judge versus a young judge? Did you get a judge from your area? Did you not? Did you get a this or that? They had all these weird little metrics that they would come in with, and you'd be like, oh, I got this. This means a good thing. Oh, I got this. This means a good thing. Oh, I got this attorney, and this attorney has a little house on an important street, so they must be important. Or I got this attorney, and they've got a giant office somewhere in downtown, and oh, look at that giant office, a skyscraper. Oh, wow. They always had these little things that made them feel like something was going to go right their way. And I can tell you now that 99% of those were total bullshit. Okay. Those people that'll pick an attorney because they have a skyscraper, those people end up very unhappy usually. Those people who pick an attorney because they're in a snooty area and they're looking for one with that little tiny law firm house that's on the road, a lot of them are unhappy too. Okay. Those attorneys are kind of known for not being very active with the claimants. A lot of people have this expectation that, and this was really because there was a firm that was like, let us worry about it. Let us worry about it. A lot of people have this expectation, and this is the final thought, and then I'm going to go to bed. A lot of people have this expectation that the attorney is going to magically do everything. That is not how this field works. Disability benefits does not work that way. It is a combination of you providing information and then periodically having talks with your attorney about which way the ship needs to go. That's the reality. It's not that like the attorney just magically has to sleep with this doctor and produce this report in there, and then you'll be found to say, or plays golf with the judge. But that's not how it works. That's not how it works. The way it works is that you have to get knowledge from your attorney about what is crappy in your record and what is good, how to improve what's good, and how to go a different direction with what's bad. What do you go and obtain? What do you seek the doctor to put in the record? What do you want to show about your past work history? How can you prove that you can't do other simple types of jobs? These are basic questions that every judge is asking themselves when a claimant opens their mouth to give testimony. That's it. That's the reality. All right. All righty, guys. I will catch you a little bit later. Have a wonderful, wonderful night. Attorney Walter Hnot, most view and subscribe to Disability Attorney in America. Please remember to like and subscribe, and also go to Google, type in Disability Resolution Law Firm or Disability Resolution Florida. Throw some stars up there. We always appreciate those. With that said, I will catch you a little bit later. We do go live on Mondays and Thursdays. Also, if you want a private session, little mini contract is below. And I will catch you a little bit later. Have a wonderful night. Please take care of yourself. Thank you so much. All right. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.